actual talk here. I did a lot of, oh, hold on, this isn't the one. I had a bunch of different things going on today, so. The nothing, this is the one, full screen. This is the nothing, a conversation about finding your true character. This is Julia in the dark on viola over there. Wow, I'm feeling it. Chapter 1. Actions speak for themselves, or learning to lie loudly. So I'm Ira Marcks, and I'm a cartoonist. Because when I put my name into Google, I found this picture. And like that's where we start all research projects, right? So if I'm brainstorming for a talk about myself, I realize I'm a cartoonist. But if I want to really like kind of get into something deeper, I got to think about what I really am. So I went back to my youth. And one of the first times I felt validated as a person was as a young boy with a uniform getting these cute little diamond-shaped badges of animals. I don't really remember what they represent exactly. I just remember I dropped out when they switched the uniform to tan. And I don't know what a Weeblos really is. So that was like one of the first times I felt validated as like a human who was doing something, you know. Here's a picture of myself and my sister at the Renaissance Festival. I had a pass that said artisan or something like that, or maybe some kind of medieval version of the word. And my dad was a silversmith, and that was probably the first time I felt like a valid artist. I don't have the card, I just have this photo. I was a certified lifeguard for a bit, but I think that certification runs out after like a year, so I'm not that anymore. I was a waiter at TGI Fridays. You had a uniform, I wasn't good at that. I'm certified as a teaching aide, so I can sit in a classroom while somebody else teaches and like write bathroom passes. I flunked art history twice, but I guess if you're going to school for graphic design, not that big of a deal, because I still got my certification. And then suddenly I'm thrown out into the world as a graphic designer. So nowhere does cartooning really fall in there. At this job, I did have a little creative freedom. It was a really small print shop, screen print shop, and so small that the owner of it actually like lived on site, like in the main office. And he had a lot of cats, and those cats hung around the office with us, which is not great for a place that's pretty non-textiles. There were just like cat beds everywhere. This business was next to a really busy road, so throughout the year I was there, not all the cats survived. And being the new person to the gig, it was up to me to bury these cats. So as much as I'm qualified to be a cartoonist, I guess I'm qualified to be a gravedigger. So I wrote out my resume as trying to like think about what my focus was going to be in terms of talking about character tonight. And I thought of this dude, Chuck Jones, who is a famous animator. He defined, maybe not invented, a lot of the famous Looney Tune characters. And the reason you remember these things, even if you haven't seen them, is because they have very defined disciplines. Like they're only about one thing. They have like a singular focus, and that makes them memorable. So I was thinking about that. Okay, I can refine my resume so my character is more memorable. So I crossed off a bunch of these things and just narrowed it down to the things I currently, as an adult, think are important. We're going to move on to Chapter 2. Interstitial moment of music. She wasn't ready. Perfect. All right, guys, we got a lot of slides to look at here. Chapter 2, PreCharacter, or the brief and glorious moments before learning how to be a complete and total failure. If you remember back to your youth, or maybe you still have this in you, and hopefully you do, art was more like kind of a verb. It was like a thing you did with friends or family to just pass the time or just see what you could make, right? It wasn't like a career path or whatever you were following. You're just sort of enjoying the moment. As mentioned in the opening, I teach a lot, and I enjoy working with young people because they are weird and they don't even like really know how weird they actually are. Not as self-conscious yet. So I teach a lot of different workshops, and a project we always start with is a comic jam. And it's good like warm up, get your brain and creative energies flowing. I don't teach a lot of technical skills. It's more like just sort of narrative construction and creativity in a nice little box. And this is a great project for that. Here's how a comic jam works. I give you a title. These are possible titles I might present you with to make a comic jam about, like Raised in the Woods or A Pirate Goes Shopping. Then I give you a page that looks like this. You have 6 little panels or windows into a world to fill up. But you don't get to tell the whole story. It's more like a game of telephone. You put your title at the top, put your name on the page, and then you draw panel 1. So here we have Weekend at the Magic Farm. And we've got our farmer waking up, and he's got his 2 pet dragons on hand. So what you do after you establish a character in a setting is you stop worrying about that, because you are trading with another artist in the room. And they continue the story, and you continue their story. So that goes around through a big group of people until you have a finished piece like this that probably looks more like some sort of weird dream than a cohesive narrative. But the cool thing is, and what I'm going to show you some of now is just like soul cleanse for you that are so like entangled in any specific art scene, is just individual panels from some of these comic jams, because they're just like little sparks of a weird idea that you never had before, because who wanted to tell a story of Weekend at the Magic Farm until they were asked to, right? How often are you presented with that? I mean, how many art assignments do you get where it's usually just kind of open-ended in terms of creativity? This is like a different sort of structure that reveals weird little things about people. I have seen probably at least 1,000 of these things. So I kind of went through and just pulled up some pictures that are charming. So Julie, if you could just like maybe play something, let's look at some of these. Here's a panel from Bad Day at the Mad Science Lab. Cute little lion. Cat social networks. Just conflict here. That's my favorite drawing of pizza I've ever seen. Dumb jokes. Some robots escaping from a prison, I guess. You're shopping pirates. I don't know what's going on in that kid's household. But some science fiction. And then sometimes you get the characters like coming together, different people's character ideas, like working together, or like seeking a similar goal. You know, it's like instinctive, or developing some kind of conflict. Poor Dave, in this case. And sometimes you'll see people deal with issues that are actually kind of bothering them. Like this one's kind of a little about bullying. And this one also kind of about bullying. So you can express different ideas. So it is silly, but the things that come out tend to be a little deeper if you're willing to like look a little closer. That comic that started, that was not about marriage at all. This is like what a kid did with it. Like, all right, it's about marriage now. Or just weirdness. This creeped me out. Yeah. Okay, on to chapter 3. Revealing character. Or looking in a weird mirror. So let's talk about football for a second. I don't know anything about the sport, but I know stories about football, like Friday Night Lights. If you've watched that show, it is a delight. And anything that is about football that's not actually football, I love. And I don't know why exactly until I watched this 2011 documentary called Undefeated. And according to IMDb, this movie is a documentary on an underdog football team who looks to reverse their fortunes with coach Bill Courtney. There's Bill Courtney. And early in the movie, Bill Courtney says this: "Football doesn't build character, it reveals character." Which is a thing, if you look that up, a lot of coaches say. And it kind of twisted into my mind, because suddenly the thing you needed all along was there in you. And like, what doesn't make you feel better than that, right? It's not about the shoes you have or the pen you're drawing with. It's like just about being in the right moment to be able to show who you really are. So I was inspired, and so was his team. So football, it's a really simple box you're working in, right? Like it's almost like a visual metaphor there, that like shape. You know what to do when you see it. But the thing about art is usually it's from like a different way you're coming at it. It's kind of up to you to decide what you want to be when you enter into it. Just in general, like just to play with art, right? So if you make something, if you look at it long enough, you start to wonder what it means. And if you're like a storyteller, usually what you do is you make a lot of characters. Like if you're any sort of artist in this room and you like to tell stories. It usually begins with just drawing characters in the margins of a book, right? You don't really go anywhere with them. But when you do, that's when it gets a little scary, because now you're taking your thing and you're putting it in a bigger world, and suddenly it has to do something. So you need to understand it a little more than just like what hair color it had or how big and cool its boots looked, right? This is a scary place to operate. So what you have to do is find a specific like artifact or an object to tell a story from, right? So here's a story I will tell you. It's about an Amazon gift card that I got for Christmas. And it is notable because my dad sent it to me. And I haven't talked to my dad in 5 years or so, and I have not exchanged gifts with my dad in at least twice that time. So it felt like some sort of symbol of connection. And I thought I should do something kind of important with it. So I bought a book by an author that I liked a lot. So Jorge Luis Borges. And I have some of the stories from this book, Labyrinth, in other collections. But I wanted this cool cover, so I bought it. And I was flipping through it. The quote from the book that stuck with me when I was looking through it, that I had read before, but it never really hit me in any particular way, is this sort of dry, boring quote. It may be that universal history is a history of the different intonations given a handful of metaphors. And in this current moment where I got this book that kind of in a way my dad bought for me, I was thinking about like those important metaphors, and there's like the metaphor of the father, and we're not going to go into like dad issues here or anything. We'll just like power through that. But the handful of metaphors that mean something to you. So one that's important to me, obviously, and maybe some of you, is like kind of the metaphor of art. When you're drawing a lot, the things you're making are visual metaphors. So as a creative person, you want to feel like an artist, right? So that means the thing you're working with has to also feel like art, and that's like part of the frustration of the whole process. So I'm going to say that art is like a weird mirror, because I want to talk about something very specific. So I feel like, lately at least, who knows what the past me was like, I don't really remember. But when I look at things that I make, there's some distorted view of a feeling or an emotion I had that I can't quite like untangle in any specific way. So that's like the weird mirror is the thing I made that I'm looking at and trying to figure out why I did it. A place I like to tell stories a lot is in the realm of speculative fiction. So according to some part of the internet, speculative fiction explores what effect new discoveries, strange happenings, and scientific progress will have on us. So you have all kinds of genres in there, right? You have like science fiction or fantasy or horror or some contemporary hybrid of those. But basically they're all asking, how will we respond when we encounter the unknown? So I've been doing this project the last couple of years called Signs from Other Worlds, mostly because I like that title. And I've been collecting these pictures on a Tumblr. And it's just an excuse to dig into mostly science fiction and like the whole history of it, like way back to Frankenstein and even like a little before that. And it's not about looking at the characters that are in those stories, but it's about the things that propel the plot forward, like the weird mirrors that these characters encounter. And who knows which way the author came to these ideas. But I think all of them are just a little puzzle of a weird reflection of the person who made them. And you know, a lot of these things get reused over and over in stories that are told like over the last 150 years or so. So I'm going to show a couple now. Julia will play something like a creepy thing. And I'm going to show you some of these slides, and maybe you'll kind of connect with them from stories you're familiar with. And I'll explain them as we go. So when you enter into a world of the unknown, you have your like allegorical dimensions, so like a man-made gateway, or a wardrobe, or a rabbit hole. Once you pass through that gateway, you have your strange encounter. So here's a moment of political networking, you could say. You've got your tripod invasion, or the strange feline amassment. These are all things that I've read about. Not making this up. Within that realm, you have characters that have all kinds of strange beliefs, right? So just kind of in general, alchemy, kind of the dream of perpetual motion. We've got demonic literature. It's a fun one. And then back in the day, there was this idea of like melancholy being like an illness that you had that spewed out of you. So it's like the black bile of melancholy. Black Bile would be a good band name for anybody looking for that. And here's your haunted sea shanty. If we move into a more modern context, you have conspiracy theories, like your civil veneer. You've got your sort of government-branded memory hole, like that missing file. Alien artifacts uncovered from the past. Your strange cults. Or your drowned cities. In these stories, you can often get a sense of a self, right, in some exaggerated form. So there's like transformation, like this teenage mutant we have here, or like a moment of self-realization. Or we can put a time machine in the mix and you can meet your future self. Enjoy some yellow liquid. The popular apocalyptic scenario, right? You're an underground bunker. What did I call this one? Your symbolic deprecation, so like spoilers for the end of Planet of the Apes, if you can't figure out what that object is. Continue on. Gender imbalance. Or the sad, tragic assimilation, like when your pet, you come home and your pet's been turned into a cyborg of some sort. I mean, maybe he's happy. You're like your four horsemen or shadowy figures. Or this weird one that I came upon, which was reverse migration. I don't know how that's like a symptom of the apocalypse. But according to this short story from 1875, it was. Reverse migration. So anyway, panel. I'd like you to speculate a little bit here. So on the screen, anybody recognize these objects here? Put your hand up. One person? Okay. A couple people. In the seminal 1990s comic strip Calvin and Hobbes by artist Bill Watterson, the young boy Calvin had a cardboard box. And throughout the series, he made various inventions out of that box. So I'm going to define these cardboard technologies to you, panel. And you're going to pick whichever one best suits either your current lifestyle or a way to better your life. Or other people's lives if you're that type of person. Who knows? We've got the duplicator, which will clone yourself as well as all your bad or good habits. You've got the cerebral enhancitron, which would make you smarter. Think about it. The transmogrifier, which will turn you into an animal or an object. Your choice. You just write it on the box, turn the dial to it. And then, of course, the time machine, which doubles as some sort of aerial transport. You can go forward or backward in time with the time machine. So our little alligator office worker guy, he's asking you guys, which box would you like? And what are you going to do with it?
I would like the third box.
You'd like the what?
The third box.
Box number, the transmogrifier? Well, now you have to tell us what you would turn into.
I would absolutely love to experience what it's like to be a Cocker Spaniel.
Cocker Spaniel? Now you have to explain that.
They're just so fluffy, and their eyes like have this weird liquefying quality, and I want to experience.
You'd like that trait for yourself.
Maybe not in a good way, but I want to know the Cocker Spaniel's pain.
Yeah. Would you retain your own name, or would you get a different name?
I would probably be named Cuddles.
Okay.
That's a cute name for a dog, and I'm a tiger.
We're recording this all right? All right. Should have had you guys sign something. Okay, wet eyes through the transmogrifier. Anybody else?
Time machine.
Where are you going?
To meet all the people that died before they should have.
You got a couple names?
Maybe Vincent van Gogh. Maybe that's the only one that's coming to my mind.
You gonna steal something from him just and like bring it back and?
No, honestly, I feel like it would be nice to just go back and be like his friend and just be like,
oh,
hey, dude, and don't kill yourself. And...
Oh, a support team.
Yeah.
I like that.
Do that with a couple people and then maybe go to the future and see flying cars if we ever made the hoverboard. I don't know.
Yeah. You have to wear the goggles in the time machine too. Don't forget to put them on. All right, Gregor.
I was originally going to go duplicator because
You'd have a housemate?
I didn't have a great relationship with my brother.
Tell us more.
I feel like that's all I'm going to tell you.
Okay.
But I think it would be awesome to have a twin.
Yeah.
Right? That it would be like that I would have that like perfect brother. Like,
does anybody have a twin here?
Any twins?
Because I would think a twin's not exactly like you, but this is exactly like you.
An identical twin.
All right. Personality too.
But then I heard about Cocker Spaniels and I was like, You know, that would be kind of amazing
Okay,
to understand the world as a Cocker Spaniel. So
Yeah.
I'm going to defer to Michaela.
Oh, all right. So we
Yeah.
come back around. All right, two Cocker Spaniels and some sort of depression support team.
I want to know.
Yeah. All right. Well, now's your chance.
Or a herring, or, you know what I mean? Like some other animal.
Chapter 4. Sharing a story or cleaning up and packaging the crazy pile of garbage we call existence. So, or the garbage to varying degrees. You know, it gets hard to make a lot of stories about yourself because if you're making up stories, they're probably about what you know, which is you. So I've been doing this project, thank God, lately, that is about other people. It's called Creative Every Day, and it's a book that's going out to middle school kids across the capital region. Creative Every Day, Tales of Art and Life Colliding. And the idea with the book is it's little vignettes of creative professionals doing what they do, and it's their story of how they got there through the trials and tribulations, successes and failures. And it's a way to offer insight for a middle school kid who probably doesn't have a lot of experience in creative fields or even know many people that do. Give them an idea of the types of jobs that are like existing right now in the moment. Like if you think back to when you were in middle school, I mean, what did art mean to you, right? It's like, was a painter or maybe a director if you followed film. But obviously there are many varying, like tiny degrees of that in the mix. So I thought I would read a couple for you now. Here's a story of Heather Schwartz. Heather was writing a journal when she was a kid and pretty quickly realized that her life was boring and she didn't want to write about that. But she also didn't want to write fiction. She just didn't have those type of ideas. And for a long time, she just wrote nothing. And when she got a little older, her teacher gave her an assignment to write an essay on a history topic. And suddenly that sparked an idea in her brain. And the challenge of writing about real events suddenly seemed really fun, kind of translating that for an audience. And since then, she's been writing nonfiction about celebrities and sports and all kinds of things. She had this nice little phrase like, through writing, I get to share how exciting the real world can be. Okay, Michael Burns from Schenectady started his college career in the theater. His teachers quickly determined he was not a good actor. He finished the program, did not pursue acting. Instead, he became a real estate agent well into adulthood. He got married and had some kids. And one day, he was reading an old-timey newspaper, and he saw an ad for a youth director. And he's like, oh, maybe that's my way into the creative field I always wanted to pursue. So he takes a job, and through that, he builds a network, and eventually builds his own improv troupe. It's called the Mop and Bucket Company. And now he gets to teach, direct, and produce theater. And he's not an actor, but still gets to put on a great performance. One more here. We have Wanda Fisher from Schenectady, who is a DJ and songwriter. And she had this cute little anecdote from her youth where she wanted to be a performer so bad at a family reunion, she climbed up on a picnic table and just started belting out a song in front of everybody, even though she didn't know all the words. And kind of the fun footnote to that middle school kids don't care about is her family was friends with like the Carter family, which is like country music royalty, if you know anything about like June Carter and like Johnny Cash and all that. Left that out of the story. Kind of interesting. But for various reasons, she never really became a performer. But music was always with her through all this time, right? All those folk songs and those stories that she knew as a kid, like she had built this giant like library of them in her brain. And she eventually became a radio DJ. So now she can take all that now useful information and share it with an audience, right? Playing the right song at the right moment for the right person. And she also got to record an album fairly recently, and she called it Sing Along with the Radio. And there's her dad. He was still alive at that point, so he was there for the recording session too. Kind of sweet. So this is a good opportunity to package somebody's story and present it in a way where it can like really hopefully help somebody else that reads it, right? I get a lot of submissions because it's just open submission on my page for this, and not all of them will be drawn by me, partly because there's so many, and partly because, not because the person's a bad creative professional, but because they don't know how to tell their own story with the details, right? A good story is about the details, and it's that jumps you off into inspiration. Instead, I got a bunch of entries that are just like kind of like bumper sticker phrases about, you know, motivation. which doesn't really work for this project. So it's about the details. And it got me thinking about like what you want to present to people. Like this is a photo of me, and this is what I'd like a student to think I look like when I'm teaching and before they're going to take my class. Sometimes students will just draw pictures of me. This was like an open public cartooning workshop I was doing. This guy that claimed to be Charles Schulz's son, which is not true, came in and he started working with us, and then just on a whim decided to, as a favor to me, draw a picture of myself. And he asked me saying, use your imagination, which I have never said that phrase and wouldn't, but I guess I'm projecting that in a classroom setting. So I can understand where he's getting that from. I feel like this drawing of me by another student is way more accurate because maybe there's a light there behind my wide eyes, but overall my face looks tired, I would describe it as. And that kind of turns out to be true because I asked my mom to send me pictures of myself from childhood, and they're not of me drawing, they're of me like asleep. So there's like the person that you are, right? And then there's the person that you would like everybody else to know. Person you are. And so we could break this into two like modern categories. And our panel, if you would be so honest with us, what is the difference between these two for you?
I don't know if an internet me exists.
Because you're too old?
Because I haven't gone to look for me.
Your internet presence, I don't mean like a Google search, but I mean how you present yourself in your social networks or wherever.
Yeah, but I've like abandoned a lot. Like I don't really try that anymore.
Okay.
So,
Then
some random pictures from the past couple of years.
Okay, Gregor's too old to answer this. Next panelist.
A younger person should be up here.
All right, well, we have some right here.
Well, I would say I'm not on social media that often, but what I do put up is all photos. Like I put up photos constantly. So I guess I kind of look like I'm really in contact with my family, and I am always outside.
Yeah.
And, seeing lots of scenic.
You're so
awesome
adventurous.
stuff, and, yeah, I always look really great in the morning. You know, all that stuff. And then the real me is a rat's nest in the morning and no makeup, and I only go hiking when I have the time, which is like never anymore. And my family mostly lives out of the state, so we don't see each other very often.
Oh, the sad truth.
See, as an artist, when I post stuff online, I love to post, like, you know, all my little doodles, the ones that I'm super proud of, and so everyone's like, yeah, she's such a great artist. Meanwhile, in real life, I'm probably just sitting on the computer with an indent card in front of me that has a picture of a potato with a smiley face on it.
Oh, why a potato? Because it's easy to draw?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Panelists, I hope you've enjoyed your time up there. People in the audience, let's give them a hand. And if you want to talk to them about anything, they're going to keep their name tag on, and they'll just answer any questions you guys have throughout the evening. No, you don't have to do that. Thank you, guys. On to Chapter 5, The Nothing. Or why am I like this? Or better yet, why are we all like anything at all? For a time I lived in Burlington, Vermont, and I worked at a bookstore called Borders, which does not exist anymore. But it was a place where you could get books and CDs and all kinds of delightful things. You didn't even have to buy them. You could just sit in those chairs there and browse and read. So I was in Vermont, right? And Vermont has a comic laureate because they are a cool state. And his name is James Chaka. And for almost 15 years, he did a web comic, which is just kind of like, in this case, a journalistic comic that you post on the internet every day or so, about his life. And it was called American Elf. And it was cool to follow because over time you'd watch him from like a young up-and-coming artist to a person who met a woman he loved and then married and then had some kids with that also liked to draw, and that would come into the comic. So when you read like the big collections of the strip, you get like the portrait of the artist as a cartoon. So one day I open up the local newspaper to read. It was also in print, it wasn't just on the web. But I opened it to read the American Elf strip. I'm like, this sounds really familiar. And it turns out this is about me at Borders. So I might as well read it to you because I am in it. It's called That James Chaka Guy, Buying the Comics Journal magazine at Borders Books. So I'm like, hey, are you that James called Chaka guy? And I like totally knew it was. And he's like, yeah, I am. And I can see him getting nervous. And I said, I sent you a copy of my book. It was a little gray book called Tomorrow We Revolutionize, which it's not actually called. It's called Tonight We Revolution. So I feel like he got it wrong on purpose, which may or may not be true. But you can see him kind of getting a little panicky, right? And then I know he doesn't remember the book, so I jump in and say, you wrote me a very nice letter, which is totally true. He didn't have my email address because I guess 2006. Why didn't he email me? He could have. But he wrote me a handwritten letter that said basically, keep it up. Maybe you'll be better than you are. Something like that. That's what it felt like. No, it was really nice, and I love that letter. So he did a good job being someone that a fan is approaching, right? Maybe some of us have moments like that where you meet your idol and act like a total idiot, right? So he says, oh, good. I'm glad I didn't blow you off. So he's happy with himself. And I would look at this comic and I'd be like, man, I don't come off very good in that. And then obviously you have to come to terms with, this comic is not about me. Like if you look back, I don't even appear in it. He's just talking to this blank, empty, black, nothing void. Right? So this is the story of him, and I am just his weird mirror for him to look in this moment. So it got me thinking, like, when did I have my first art story begin about myself? And I went way back past my Boy Scout days to a time when I was a little kid living in Florida. And we lived in a trailer. It was really small, but we had this special room that was my dad's art studio, because like I said, he was a silversmith because of the Renaissance Fair. And he had on his workbench a clipboard with old printer paper on it. And he would read to me every night. And we had moved past little kids' books, and we were finally reading like a real book, and it was The Hobbit, which is like a really detailed adventure story, right? And I was living in that world all the time in my brain, because it was like the first story I ever knew. And I would ask him to draw the map, and he didn't draw really well, but he drew better than I could. And so I would sort of list off the things, and he would put them in there. So there's like the Lonely Mountains and all the rivers, and in the bottom left-hand corner you have the Shire, where the hobbits are from. And I had my own pencil, and I was putting little seagulls in the sky as he drew. And I could see myself kind of like looking down over this whole big world. And the day we were doing this was special because we were at the end of the book. And all the adventure had pretty much rounded out, and we're just at like the time when Bilbo's returning home to his friends and family. And I get in bed, because now it's evening, and I climb into bed, and I would face the wall and close my eyes when he would read, so I'm like picturing the story in the back of my mind. And he gets into bed with me, and he opens up the book, and we're at the part where Bilbo's on a ridge, and he's on his pony, and he's got his sword from like fighting dragons, and he's got his satchel of money. He's about to return home, and he's really happy. And he's a hobbit, and hobbits sing songs a lot when they're happy. So I am not going to sing, but I will read you the poem that my dad read to me in this moment, right? So we're going to finish the book. The poem goes like this. Roads go ever on, over rock and under tree, by caves where never sun has shone, by streams that never find the sea. Over snow by winter sown, and through the merry flowers of June, over grass and over stone. And I'm laying there with my eyes closed in this moment, and I realize that his breathing has changed and that he's fallen asleep. When you're a little kid and the adult you're with falls asleep, they might as well have fallen off the face of the planet. It didn't even occur to me to wake him up, right? So I'm sitting here in this moment where I have this character who's basically like a hero of the world at this point, and I want to know so bad what that's going to feel like to return home to like everybody you've ever loved and have them know what you did. Doesn't that feel like that would be good? So I'm imagining in my mind what could be like the last line to that poem. And obviously, I don't know anything. I don't know any stories. I just see nothing. I know how to draw seagulls over a map. That's all I have. So this emptiness that I saw in that moment of the end of that poem, it's always stuck with me, even though we finished The Hobbit, obviously. But this ending is the one I remember. And that big darkness, I think I keep it in like this little dish that I carry around with me all the time. And in that dish is where I throw every creative idea I've ever had that was ever worth putting out of me. I would throw it in there. It'd be like a little spark in the dark. And the idea was if I fill this dish, it'll be like this luminous beacon, and I could put it on a shelf if I wanted, or I could give it to somebody as a gift, and then they would get inspired, and life would be great. But over time you realize as you're throwing stuff into that dark that the dish isn't ever getting any more full, because it is just an empty void. And that is a sad moment until you actually like look into that darkness, and then in it you can see other little sparks like way off in the distance, and that's all the other creative ideas, right? So every like thing you throw out in the darkness, you just have to hope some people were there in that moment of creation.